Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset, therefore it must be Zeyde Story Corner. That's right, Zeyde Story Corner. And we continue with the stories of Isaac Bashevis Singer, which have been wonderful. Yeah, they have. They actually been wonderful stories. And I hope you've been enjoying them as much as Zeyde has enjoyed reading them to you. And so let's see who we have in the chat room. We have Richard, and we have Simcha, Veronica, Donald, and Marshall, and more coming. Yeah, more coming. And those who are watching in the background who can't get into the chat, we're glad you're all here this evening. So, shall we get to it? We should. Yeah, okay. So, let me get you onto your camera here. And there I am. All right. Okay. So, we continue on with our stories tonight. And this one is called The Squire. Okay, and we begin. 5 Hanukkah lights burned in the... Again, I have to say, this he does like to write about Hanukkah. I kind of get the feeling that this is probably his probably one of his more favorite holidays. Yeah, you would think so now, wouldn't you? Okay, so anyway, we go on with the story. 5 Hanukkah lights burn in the Hanukkah lamp in the Triskar Chassidic study hall, as well as the large candle called the beetle. In the oven, potatoes were roasting, and their smell tickled everyone's nostrils. Old Reb Beresh sneezed, and the boys around him wished him good health. He wiped his nose with his large handkerchief and said, "Some people think that in olden times miracles were more frequent than today. This is not true. The truth is that miracles were rare in all times. If too many miracles occurred, people would rely on them too much. Free choice would cease. The powers on high want men to do things, make efforts, not be too lazy. But there are cases when only a miracle can save a man. Something like this happened when I was a boy here in Belgrade about 80 years ago, and perhaps maybe even a little longer. Boy, Reb Beresh must have been old. Yeah, he must have been 80 years or even longer. Our village was much smaller than it is today, whereas the Mocha Street is now there was still forest. Lublin Street was only an alley. Where we are sitting now, there was a pasture of cows. Now, there lived in Belgrade a wealthy young man by the name of Falik, a Talmudic scholar. He was the owner of a dry goods store. He had other businesses as well. His wife, Sarah, came from Lublin, from a fine family. Suddenly, the couple's luck changed. Whether it was for punishment or some transgression or just a degree from heaven, I do not know. First, the store burned down. There was no fire insurance in those days. Then Sarah became ill. There was no doctor or druggist in Bilogray in those days. There were only 3 remedies for people to apply: leeches, cups, and bleeding. If these 3 didn't help, nothing more could be done. Well, Sarah died and left 3 orphans, a boy, the name of Manes, and 2 young girls, Pesele and Etele. Now, not long after Sarah's death, Falik himself became mortally ill. He grew pale and emaciated, and after a while he became bedridden, and it seemed he would never recover. Lippe, the healer, recommended chicken broth, barley soup, and goat milk. Nothing changed. First of all, Falik lost his appetite. And second, he was left without any income. Nowadays, people are selfish. They don't care about others, but in former times, people helped one another when in need. They tried to send bread to Falik and milk, butter, and cheese, but he refused to accept charity. The community leader came to him and offered him help secretly, so no one would know, but Falik said, "I would know." It happened the first night of Hanukkah. As always, there was a great deal of snow, frost, blizzards. Things had reached such a stage in Falik's house that finally there was not even a loaf of bread. In better times, Falik had possessed a number of silver objects: candlesticks, a spice box, a Passover plate. But Manes, the oldest child, had sold them all. There was one precious article still in the house: an antique Hanukkah lamp made by some ancient silversmith. There lived a usurer in town who would pay a pittance for the most costly objects. Manes wanted to sell him the Hanukkah lamp too, but Falik said to his son, "Wait until after Hanukkah." There were a few pennies left in the house, but instead of buying bread, Manes bought oil and wicks for the Hanukkah lamp. The girls complained they were hungry, and Manes said to them, "Let's imagine that it is Yom Kippur." I know this story because Manes told it to me years later. Since Falik could not leave his bed anymore, Manes brought the lamp to his father on the first night of Hanukkah, and Falik made the proper benedictions and lit the first light. He also hummed the song Rock of Ages, Maut Zur, and kissed his children. Then Manes took the Hanukkah lamp to the living room and put it on the windowsill according to the law. The children sat at the table hungry without having eaten supper. It was cold in the house. Only a year before, Falik had given his children Hanukkah money to play dreidel, and Sarah had fried pancakes for the family. Now, everything was bathed in gloom. The children looked at each other with eyes that seemed to ask, "From whence cometh my help?" From the Tehillim. Suddenly, someone knocked at the door. Who could this be? Manas asked himself. Probably someone with a gift. His father had warned him again and again not to accept any gifts. Manas decided not to open the door this time, so as to avoid arguing with the good people. But the knocking on the door did not stop. After a while, Manas went to the door, ready to say, "Father told me not to accept anything." When he opened the door, he saw a squire, a broad-shouldered, in a long fur coat with tails down to his ankles, and a fur hat sprinkled with snow. Manas became so frightened that he lost his tongue. It almost never happened that a squire came into a Jewish house, especially in the evening. In my day, when a squire visited a village, he came in a carriage harnessed by 8 horses, and his valets rode in front to clear the way for him. Often they blew trumpets to announce that the great Lord was coming. Bilagray still belonged to Count Zamoysk, who was as rich and mighty as a king. To Manas, the squire said, "I passed by in my sleigh, and I saw little light in the lamp, and the lights of which I had never seen in all my life, with goblets, flowers, a lion, a deer, a leopard, an eagle, all beautifully done. Why did you kindle only one light if there are 8 holders? Is this some Jewish holiday? And where are your parents?" Manas knew Polish and how to speak to an important man. He said, "Come in, Your Excellency. It is for us a great honor." The squire entered the living room, and for a long while he stared at the Hanukkah lamp. He began to question Manas, and the boy told him the story of Hanukkah, how the Jews had fought the Greeks in ancient times in the land of Israel. He also told him of the miracle that had happened with the oil for lighting the menorah in the temple. How after the war there had been barely enough oil left to light the menorah for one day, but a miracle happened, and the oil was sufficient for 8 days. Then the squire saw the dreidel on the table and asked, "What is this?" Although the children had no money with which to play, they had put the dreidel there just to remember former times. Manas explained to the squire that Hanukkah is the only holiday when children are allowed to play games. He told him the rules of dreidel, The squire asked, "Could I play with you?" "My driver will wait with the sleigh. It's cold outside, but my horses are covered with blankets, and the driver has a fur jacket." "Your Excellency," said, "my father is sick. We have no mother, and we don't have a penny to our names." The squire said, "I think I missed a page there." Maybe. Let's take a look here. I think you're right. I think we did. Yeah, I thought it was moving a little too fast. Yeah, okay, so anyway. Okay, so the squire comes into the house. "The squire entered the living room. This is the way it goes when you're doing live programming, huh?" Okay, so you get all the happy accidents. Okay, so anyway, the squire is coming into the house now. Okay, and we pick up the story from there. Okay. The squire entered the living room, and for a long while he stared at the Hanukkah lamp. He began to question Manes. The boy told him that's it. We did read that. Okay, anyway, okay, so let's get back to, I have no idea what's going on here tonight. Okay. "Your Excellency," Manes said, "my father is sick. We have no mother, and we don't have a penny to our name." The squire said, "I intend to offer you 1,000 gulden for your magnificent lamp. But I don't have the whole sum with me, so I will give you 500 gulden in advance, and with this money you can play. As he said this, he took out a large bag of gold coins from his coat and threw it on the table. The children were so astonished that they forgot their hunger. The game began, and the greatest unbeliever could have seen that the whole event was a wonder from heaven. The children kept winning, and the squire losing. And in 1 hour, the squire lost all his gold, and the children won every coin. Then the squire cried out, "Lost is lost. My driver and my horse must be cold. Good night, happy Hanukkah, and don't worry about your father. With God's help, he will soon recover." Only after the squire left did the children realize what had happened to them. Not only had they gotten 500 gulden as an advance on the lamp, but the squire had lost additional money. Half of the table was covered with coins. The girls, Pesele and Netele, burst out crying. Menes ran outside to see if the squire, the sleigh, the horses, the driver were still there, but they had all vanished without leaving any tracks in the snow. Usually horse harnesses to a sleigh have bells on their necks, and one can hear the jingling from far away, but the night was quiet. I will make it short. The moment the squire left, Falik opened his eyes. He had gone to sleep near death and had woken up a healthy man. Nothing but a miracle could have saved him, and so the miracle occurred. Who was the squire? The prophet Elijah, the boys asked. Who knows? He certainly was not a Polish squire. Did he ever come back to get the lamp? Not as long as I was in Belgrade, the old man replied. If he had been the prophet Elijah, he would have kept his promise. One of the boys remarked. Old Berish did not answer immediately. He pulled his beard and pondered. Then he said, "They have a lot of time in heaven. He might have come to their children's children or to their grandchildren. I married and moved to another village. As far as I know, the Hanukkah lamp remained with Falik and his children as long as they lived. Some rabbis said that when God works a miracle, he often does it in such a way that it should appear natural. There were some unbelievers in Belgrade, and they said that it was a real squire, a rich spendthrift, who was in the mood to squander his money. Those who deny God always try to explain all wonders as normal events or as coincidences. I'm afraid the potatoes are already burning, he added. Old Reb Beresh opened the door of the oven and with his bare fingers began to pull out half-burned potatoes from the glowing coals. And that's the end of the story. Okay. It probably would have been better if we had not mixed up the pages. But, hey, there it is. It is what it is, and there you have it. Okay. This story is called Ole and Trufa, a story of 2 leaves. Imagine that, 2 leaves. Okay. The forest was large and thickly overgrown with all kinds of leaf-bearing trees. It was in the month of November. Usually it's cold this time of year, and it even happens that it snows, but this November was relatively warm. The nights were cool and windy, but as soon as the sun came out in the morning, it turned warm. You might have thought it was summer, except for the forest was strewn with fallen leaves, some yellow as saffron, some red as wine, some the color of gold, and some of mixed color. The leaves had been torn down by the rain, by the wind, some by day, some by night, and now they formed a deep carpet over the forest floor. Although their juices had run dry, the leaves still exuded a pleasant aroma. The sun shone down on them through the living branches. The worms and flies, which had somehow survived the autumn storms, crawled over them. The space beneath the leaves provided hiding places for crickets, field mice, and many other creatures who sought the protection in the earth. The birds that don't migrate to warmer climates in the winter, but stay behind perched on the bare tree limbs. Among them were sparrows, tiny birds, but endowed with much courage and the experience accumulated through thousands of generations. They hopped, twittered, and searched for food the forest offered this time of year. Many, many insects and worms had perished in recent weeks, but no one mourned their loss. God's creatures know that death is merely a phase of life. With the coming of spring, the forest would again fill with grasses, green leaves, blossoms, and flowers. The migrating birds would return from far-off lands and locate their abandoned nest. Even if the wind or the rain had disturbed the nest, it could be easily repaired. On the tip of a tree, which had lost all its other leaves, two still remained. One leaf was named Ole, and the other Trufa. Ole and Trufa both hung from one twig. Since they were at the very tip of the tree, they received lots of sunlight. For some reason unknown to Ole and Trufa, they had survived all the rains, all the cold nights and winds, and still clung to the tip of the twig. Who knows the reason one leaf falls and another remains? But Ole and Trufa believe the answer lay in the great love they bore each other. Ole was slightly bigger than Trufa and a few days older, but Trufa was prettier and more delicate. One leaf can do little for another when the wind blows, the rain pours, or the hail begins to fall. It even happens in summer that a leaf is torn loose. Come autumn and winter, nothing can be done. Still, Ole encouraged Trufa at every opportunity. During the worst storms, when the thunder clapped, the lightning flashed, and the wind tore off not only leaves, but whole branches, Ole pleaded with Trufa, "Hang on, Trufa! Hang on with all your might!" At times, during cold and stormy nights, Trufa would complain, "My time has come, Ole, but you hang on." "What for?" Ole asked. "Without you, my life is senseless. If you fall, I'll fall with you." "No, Ole, don't do it. So long as a leaf can stay up, it must not let go." "It all depends if you stay with me," Ole replied. "By day I look at you and admire your beauty. At night I sense your fragrance. Be the only leaf on a tree? No, never." "Ole, your words are so sweet, but they're not true," Trufa said. "You know very well that I'm no longer pretty. Look how wrinkled I am. All my juices have dried out, and I'm ashamed before the birds. They look at me with such pity. At times it seems to me they're laughing at how shriveled I've become. I've lost everything, but one thing is still left me, my love for you. Isn't that enough? Of all our powers, love is the highest, the finest," Ole said. "So long as we love each other, we will remain here. And no wind, rain, or storm can destroy us. I'll tell you something, Trufa. I never loved you as much as I love you now. Why, Ole, why? I'm all yellow. Who says green is prettier than yellow? All colors are equally handsome. And just as Ole spake these words, that which Trufa had feared all these months happened. A wind came up and tore Ole loose from the twig. Trufa began to tremble and flutter until it seemed that she too would soon be torn away, but she held fast. She saw Ole fall and sway in the air, and she called to him in a leafy language, Ole, come back! Ole! Ole! And we are going to take out a break now. Okay, we will come back in 6 minutes, and we will see what happened to Ole and Trufa. So, stay tuned. We'll be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back, just as we promised. Okay. Let's see if we can find out what happened to Ole and Trufa. Okay. But before she could even finish, Ole vanished from sight. He blended in with the other leaves on the ground, and Trufa was left all alone on the tree. So long as it was still day, Trufa managed somehow to endure her grief. But when it grew dark and cold, and a piercing rain began to fall, she sank into despair. Somehow she felt the blame for all the leafy misfortunes lay with the tree. The trunk, with its mighty limbs, leaves fell, but the trunk stood tall, thick, and firmly rooted in the ground. No wind, rain, or hail could upset it. What did it matter to a tree which probably lived forever to what became of a leaf? To Trufa, the trunk was a kind of god. It covered itself with leaves for a few months, then it shook them off. It nourished them with its sap for as long as it pleased, then it let them die of thirst. Trufa pleaded with the tree to give her back her Ole and make it summer again, but the tree didn't heed or refused to heed her prayers. Trufa didn't think a night could be so long as this one, so dark, so frosty. She spoke to Ole and hoped for an answer, but Ole was silent and gave no sign of his presence. Trufa said to the tree, "Since you've taken Ole from me, take me too." But the tree didn't acknowledge even this prayer. After a while, Trufa dozed off. This wasn't sleep, but a strange languor. Trufa awoke, and to her amazement, found that she was no longer hanging on the tree. The wind had blown her down while she was asleep. This was different from the way she used to feel when she awoke on the tree with the sunrise. All her fears and anxieties had now vanished. The awakening also brought with it an awareness she had never felt before. She knew now that she wasn't just a leaf that depended on every whim of the wind, but that she was part of the universe. She no longer was small or weak or transient, but part of eternity. Through some mysterious force, Trufa understood the miracle of her molecules, atoms, protons, and electrons, the enormous energy she represented, and the divine plan of which she was a part. Next to her lay Ole, and they greeted each other with a love they hadn't been aware of before. This wasn't a love that depended on chance or caprice, but a love as mighty and eternal as the universe itself. That which they had feared all the days and nights between April and November turned out not to be not death, but redemption. A breeze came and lifted Ole and Trufa in the air, and they soared with a bliss known only by those who have freed themselves and have joined with eternity. And there you have it, the story of Ole and Trufa. Okay, I forgot to mention that Red and Soshi have joined us. Good to have you. Okay. Delfunka. Now watch it. No. That's the name. Delfunka, where the rich live forever. This ought to be a good one, huh? Okay. It happened in Helm. Of course it happened in Helm. All these kinds of things happen in Helm. Now, you would know that, would you? Now, don't start that with the whole thing about my family coming from Helm. I am just saying, never mind. Okay, we go on. Okay, old joke. You have to go back almost a year to find, or actually 2 years to find out what that joke is about. Anyway, it happened in Helm, a city of fools. Where else could it have happened? On a winter morning in the community house, Gronom Ax, the wisest man of Helm. Seriously? Anyway. And his 5 sages, Dopelekish, Zainvel Nini, Schreitel Fool, Sender Donkey, and Schmendrik Numskull, sat at a long table. All 6 looked tired and had red eyes from lack of sleep. For 7 days and 7 nights they had been thinking about a problem which they could not solve. The treasury of the city of Helm was empty. For many weeks, Gronom and his sages had not received their salaries. Even though it was not Hanukkah, Schlemiel the beetle sat at the other end of the table playing dreidel by himself. Suddenly, the door opened, and Zalman Tipish entered. He was the richest man in Chelm. He had a long white beard. When they saw Zalman Tipish, Gronim and the sages looked up in surprise. Zalman Tipish never paid a visit to the community house because they levied high taxes on him. "Good morning, Gronomax. Good morning, sages," Zalman Tipish greeted them solemnly. "A good morning to you, Zalman Tipish," all of them answered in accord. "What made you pay such an early visit?" "I came to ask your advice," Zalman Tipish said. "If it is good, I will pay the treasury 2,000 gold pieces." "What sort of advice?" Gronomax asked. "You all know I have just turned 80. You also know that no man lives forever. But I, Zalman Tipish, wish to live forever. I would like forever to eat blintzes with sour cream, drink tea with jam, coffee with chicory, forever smoke my long pipe. To make it short, I want to live forever." "Live forever!" exclaimed Gronomax and his 5 sages. "How is this possible?" "This is the reason I came to you," Zalman said. "If you will tell me how to live forever, you will get what I just promised." Saying these words, Zalman Tipish took out a bag filled with gold coins and poured them on the table. When Gronim and his sages saw the pile of gold, they began to murmur. Zalman Tipish was known as a miser. Gronomax immediately put his index finger to his forehead in order to think hard. The other sages did the same thing. After a long thought, Gronomax said, "You know well that Chelm is the wisest city in the world, and I, Gronomax, am the wisest man in Chelm, which means that I am the wisest man in the universe. But just the same, I cannot give you the kind of advice you desire. No man can live forever. Even I, Gronomax, won't live forever." "Even Methuselah did not live forever," Dopey Lakish chimed in. "Even King Solomon did not live forever," Zainvel Nini added. "Even our rabbi is not going to live forever," Treitelfool pronounced. "Even a lion does not live forever," Sender Donkey remarked. "Even an elephant does not live forever," Shmendrik Numbskull said. "All this is true, but I, Zalman Tipish, decided that I must live forever. If you won't advise me how to do it, you won't get a penny." Gronomax was about to say that he was sorry, but at that moment, Schlemiel the beetle stuck out his tongue and placed his thumb on the tip of his nose as a sign he wanted to speak. Now that is an awful strange sign of you want to speak. Stick out your tongue and put your thumb on your nose. How ridiculous, huh? Okay, anyway. What do you want to say, Shlemiel? Gronomax asked. I found a way, Shlemiel said. You found a way? Gronomax asked in astonishment. Yes, my lord. The thing is like this. Last week I had nothing to do all day long, and I started to look over the records of our Helm suburbs. Among others, I glanced through the records of our suburb of Delfunka. Delfunka, where all the paupers and beggars of Helm live? Gronomax asked. Yes, Delfunka, Shlemiel said. As you know, we have in our books the names of all those who are born and died in the last 300 years. When I went through the list of all who died in Delfunka, I realized that no rich man had ever died there. This means that the rich in Delfunka live forever. My advice, therefore, is that Zalman Tipish should buy a house in Delfunka, settle there, and never die. As simple as that. Can't argue with that logic. Okay, anyway. Gronomax opened his mouth and stared agape. Shlemiel, you gave the right advice. But how is it possible? Are you cleverer than I? No one is cleverer than you, Gronomax, the 5 sages sang out in chorus. My only explanation is that since you have been sitting so many years near us, part of our wisdom spilled over on you, said Gronomax. True, the 5 sages agreed. Dobikilkish added, even a horse would become wise if he stayed with us so long. Zalman, you got good advice. Now give us the 2,000 gold coins, Gronomax suggested. Before I give you so much money, I must be sure that the advice is right, Zalman Tipish answered. I will give you an advance of 10 gold coins now. And after I have moved to Delfunka and have lived forever, I will pay the balance. We cannot wait that long, Gronomax protested. We need the payment right now. Either you take the 10 gold coins or you will receive nothing, Zalman Tipish insisted. For a long while, Gronomax and his sages haggled with Zalman Tipish, but, as always, Zalman Tipish prevailed. He gave Gronomax the 10 gold coins and left. For 5 years, Zalman Tipish lived in Delfunka, ate blintzes with sour cream, drank tea with jam, coffee with chicory, smoked his long pipe, and did not die. Gronomax often asked for the balance, but Zalman Tipish always had the same answer. First, let me live forever, and then I will pay. It seemed that Zalman Tipish was right in not paying beforehand, because one day in the 6th year, he became sick and died. When Gronomax heard the bad news, he immediately called for the sages, and they pondered 7 days and 7 nights why Zalman Tipish had died. Again, Shlomo found the explanation. For 5 years, Zalman did no business because one could not earn any money in Delphuka. Instead, he spent a fortune on such luxuries as sour cream, coffee, tobacco, chicory. He most probably became poor, and so he died, like all the other poor people. To live forever in Delphuka, one must be as rich as the Rothschild, Shlomo said. Gronemox in the 5 stages again admired the Shlomo's sharp mind. Gronemox promptly dispatched letters to the Rothschilds, inviting them to come speedily to Delphuka and begin to live forever. But months passed, and the Rothschilds did not arrive. This time, Gronemox discovered the reason himself. He said, "The rich are so stingy that they would rather die cheaply in London, Paris, and Vienna than live forever in Delphuka at a higher cost." So what should we do now? The sages asked. We must get rich ourselves. How? The sages asked. Of course, by levying taxes on the paupers of Chelm, Gronemox replied. Shlomo made the usual sign that he wanted to speak. He wanted to say that, according to his latest figures, even the Rothschilds were not rich enough to live forever in Delphuka. But Gronemox said, Shlomo, everything is crystal clear. We don't need your advice anymore. Keep quiet. Be silent, Dopelakish chimed in. You are only a beetle, not a sage, Seinfeld shouted. Not even half a sage, Treadle Fool screamed. And you will never live forever, Sender Donkey hollered. Not even half of forever, Schmendrick Numbskull yelled. Since he was forbidden to talk, and he had nothing else to do, Shlomo took out his dreidel and began to play by himself. While the dreidel spun, Shlomo was muttering, If it falls to the right, I lose. If it falls to the left, you win. And there you have it. Okay. Well, we have come to the end of our time together. I hope you enjoyed the stories tonight. We'll be back next week, God willing, with more stories. Until then, don't forget that tomorrow night is the Rabbis Discuss with Rabbi A and Rabbi Anshel. And Wednesday night is the Torah study in depth with Rabbi A and Rabbi A, Rabbi Anshel, that is. And then Friday night is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv, the Shabbat. And Shabbat morning is Shachrit and Shachrit and Musaf Shabbat service. Don't forget, this is Shabbat Mavarchim and Shabbat Shekalim also. So we have a twofer this week. Okay. Thank you all for being here. And until next time, we shall simply say, Laila Tov.